Cheers. Good evening, everyone. My name's Councillor Ian Albert. I'll be the Vice Chair of the Standards Committee. I'll be chairing the meeting this evening. Good evening. I'd like to welcome members and officers to the Standards Committee. Before the meeting starts, I'd like to invite the committee member and scrutiny manager to explain how proceedings will work.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. If a member wishes to speak, they should use the speak button located on your microphone unit. The microphone will light up green and the Chair will be alerted of your request to speak. When the Chair invites you to speak, your microphone will be made live, at which point it will turn red and you can speak. When the public... Ignore that bit. When requested to vote, voting will be via the yes, no, abstain buttons on your microphone unit. Details of how members voted will be shown on the screens around the room and the result will be visible on the YouTube stream. Are there any questions before we proceed with the meeting? No. Thank you. Back to you then, Chair.
Thank you. Apologies for absence. Received apologies from Councillors Pupila Singham, Councillor Lucas, Councillor MacDonald, Councillor Griffiths, and also Councillor Bryant. Having given due notice, Councillor Paul Ward will substitute for Councillor Lucas. Welcome, Paul, and thank you. Are there any further apologies? No, can't see any, but thank you. Minutes of the 5th of March, I propose that we take as read and approve as a true record the minutes of the meeting held on the 5th of March 2025. Can I have a seconder for? Thank you, Keith. Councillor Hoskins to second. Yes, by all means.
Just an error, two minor errors to draw your attention. It's a matter for you. I just wanted to mention them because in terms of attendees at the last meeting, my colleague Patrick Hodson was here, not Wei Bing Hu. I think it's just a typo. That was that. And the other, which does bear on my own rather modest contribution, it says that I was stuck rather than struck, which you will find at page 9. Again, it's of no consequence, but since you want to have an accurate account, I'm looking at page 9, top of page 9, paragraph 2. I noticed a balance should be stuck. I said a balance should be struck.
Thank you, Nicholas. Yeah, colleagues, happy to take those two amendments on board. With those, if there are any other further comments, if we can then move to the vote.
Chair, that motion's carried.
Thank you. There's no other business been notified this evening. In accordance with council policy, this meeting is being recorded. The recording will be available both on the council's YouTube channel as well as on the council's ModGov site alongside the documents from this meeting. Members are reminded to make declarations of interest before an item. The detailed reminder about this and speaking rights is set out under Chair's announcements on the agenda. For the purposes of clarification, that's 4.8.23a of the Constitution does not apply to this meeting. Therefore, a member may leave the room during the debate and consideration of that item and be able to vote. However, please be mindful of the business on the agenda and wherever possible leave at an appropriate point in the proceedings. There's no public participation at tonight's meeting, which takes us then to agenda item 6, the standards report. And if I can hand over to Isabel to present. Isabel.
Thank you, Chair. So since publishing this report, I wanted to provide a very short verbal update. So in the last week alone, we've received 5 new councillor complaints, which are up and running, so won't be in the report. But as you can imagine, it does reflect what we're seeing more widely across the sector. So it is a growing awareness of the standards regime and a lower tolerance for poor behaviour, particularly in public meetings and on social media. And I want to give members a clear sense of the process of what we go through when we do receive a complaint. So when we receive a complaint, what we do is we have a full review of the complaint and we assess that against both the Code of Conduct within the Constitution and our complaints handling procedure. Then we have meetings with both the complainant and the subject member to clarify any issues. We review written statements, correspondence, third-party evidence. Sometimes we have to watch recordings back of meetings, and if a meeting is relevant, then we'd look through the papers, the reports, the minutes to understand the context. We liaise with the independent person. We keep the reserve independent person appraised. We prepare detailed assessment decisions for both the complainant and then for the subject member. And then we update our spreadsheets and maintain a full checklist for audit purposes and record all of those outcomes for transparency. And then we come here and report them to you. So the purpose of me setting it out is just to give the visibility to the committee of the diligence, transparency and fairness that underpin this procedure. And ultimately, I do hope that it demonstrates the standards framework here at North Herts, which is robust, credible and defensible. And that's something I do think that we can be proud of. So in terms of national level stuff, so you'll see that the report sets out the English Devolution and Community Empowerment Bill, which remains the main governance development at the moment. So it doesn't directly alter the councillor conduct regime in itself, but it does reinforce the wider expectation that councils must have strong local accountability and ethical governance frameworks, particularly where structural change might follow. So alongside the complaints work, we have continued to strengthen our ethical governance framework. So the committee may recall that we recently endorsed the Code of Practice for Statutory Officers. So that was this time last year. And the committee will be considering the Monitoring Officer Protocol this evening, which I'll present separately. But both of them, they reinforce our commitment to clear, accountable decision making. So that concludes my update, Chair, and I'm happy to take any questions on the report.
Thank you, Isabel. And probably I should have, my apologies, I should have formally welcomed you to the first Standards Committee meeting in your new role. So welcome and congratulations. Of course, we've seen you on many other occasions, but welcome. Questions for the Monitoring Officer? Ralph, Councillor Munzer.
Thank you. And could I just echo those comments? It's very, very good to see you in that seat, and congratulations. And I know you're bringing an awful lot of energy and enthusiasm to the council and to Standards in particular, which is most welcome. Could I just ask, with respect to, I know this report is detailing complaints against councillors, but also, if we're talking about standards in public life, we also have to accept that officers, and particularly senior officers of director level and above, are also in the public eye. And it's important that they are abiding by the code of conduct for officers. In terms of how we as councillors monitor and scrutinise that, what is the process for that? And is there a separate report which could be delivered to this committee?
Yeah. Isabel?
Thank you, Chair. So if it's to do with officers, that would be their line manager. So that would be more of a HR personnel stuff. That wouldn't be the standards regime that we operate for the Standards Committee. But they do get held accountable, in other ways. So if a member of the public or a councillor wishes to raise a grievance, then they can do so through the proper channels. So the HR policy will detail how one may go about that. If it's a member of the public rather than another colleague or a member, then they've got the 3 Cs. And then ultimately you have got the local government ombudsman as well to go to, and those are reported as well to members. So those reports are fully and transparently reported, but it wouldn't be something that we would have at this committee.
Did you want to come back on that, Ralph, or that's fine? No. Thank you. Any further questions from colleagues? I can't see any. Oh, Paul, sorry, Paul. You haven't.
Thank
you've
you.
just come up on my.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Despite just standing in, I have actually read the pack. Just one question. I noticed the table of complaints minus the new ones. Just obviously not specifics, but in general, some of them end up being closed due to no further information provided. Does that mean that the complainant was asked and then didn't offer anything else, and therefore you can't follow up, or does that mean they withdrew it, or what's the sort of circumstances for that?
No, thank you. So the ones that you see there were related to one another. So it was a very general complaint. So when we receive a complaint, we usually go to a triage and we do an assessment in accordance with the CHP, the Complaints Handling Procedure. But if we don't have enough information, we will ask for more information from the complainant, and we do contact them, we email them, write to them, and then we give them a reminder that this will be closed down if they don't provide us with the information that we need in order to go through that assessment in accordance with the CHP. So that's why you see those outcomes recorded there.
Any further questions? I can't see any. So we've been asked here that the committee notes the contents of the report and makes any suggestions on future actions. I'm happy to propose this from the chair. Could I have a seconder? Councillor Hoskins, thank you. And then open for any further debate from colleagues. If not, can't see anything. Shall we then move to the vote on that recommendation?
Thank you, Chair. That's carried unanimously.
Thank you. Which then takes us to item 7, which is the adoption of updated guidance to councillors on outside bodies. And again, obviously, Isabel to present as well.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm pleased to present this report, which seeks your recommendation to full council for the adoption of the updated guidance to councillors on outside bodies. So if you look at the report, you'll see that the updated guidance, which is attached, provides clear and practical advice for members on their duties, their obligations, and their liabilities when they are appointed to external organisations, which are often referred to as outside bodies. So the purpose is to ensure that members understand the capacity in which they're acting, the legal and ethical responsibilities that come with such appointments, and the boundaries of the council's indemnity and insurance arrangements. So in terms of why this update was needed, so our previous guidance was updated last in 2016. And since then, the operating environment for local authorities has evolved considerably, both in terms of our partnership working and the risks associated with councillors and their appointments to external bodies. So we've taken the opportunity to review the guidance comprehensively to reflect the current statutory framework, to ensure members are fully aware of the liabilities associated with organisational structures, and to clarify the council's position on indemnity and personal responsibility. So in terms of the summary of the main changes, you'll see that the revised guidance doesn't alter the overall principles of our previous policy, but it does modernise and simplify how that information is presented so that members know exactly where they stand. So the committee is asked to recommend to full council the adoption of the updated guidance document, which is appended to the report. And if approved, the guidance will be circulated to all members and incorporated into the council's constitution and our wider governance framework. So, Chair, I commend the report to the committee and I would welcome any questions.
Thanks. Thanks. Can I just one immediate sort of question? I think this is a really important document, and I think lots of us here are members of various. We have a very long list of outside bodies and so on, and I think the document particularly details the conflicts of interest and so on. So I suppose two things there. One, which is sort of you would be the person that, if councillors have some concerns around that you be the person to and the team to contact. My guess secondly is probably, do we think, I mean, I appreciate councillors' time is usually valuable and officer time, whether there is an offering, whether it's part of induction or some further piece of sort of session that could be offered in relation to that, because I think there's some really important things in there that I think it's very easy just to get appointed to a body, but as we've seen from lots of recent organisations around in all parts of the district, that it's not always a very simple thing and can provide some quite complex and conflicting issues. But be interested to sort of get your views in relation to that.
No, thank you so much, Chair. So we'll be including this topic as part of the next standards and code of conduct refresher training. And the updated guidance, if approved, will be circulated to all members as well as being part of that training. I totally agree that training would be helpful because sometimes it can be quite difficult to differentiate when, councillors are protected by indemnities, when they're not, what happens if there is a conflict sort of thing. Hopefully the guidance does provide good examples, so it's not as challenging as previously as the previous guidance was. But it does ensure that everyone has access to the same clear information and knows where to seek advice as well. So I'm incorporating that into the refresher training and also circulating this. But if there's any questions in the meantime, which can't wait, definitely just email the MO inbox and it'll be picked up. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. Any further questions from colleagues? Sure. Was that a Twitch or was that? Yeah. Sorry. I'm sorry. There's obviously a slight lag in things coming up on my screen. So yeah, apologies, Sean.
Right.
To you.
Thank you, Chair. I suppose it might be slightly tangential in terms of this being the guidance to councillors, but I suppose from the other side, in terms of the roles that are offered in, I suppose through the council in terms of those outside bodies, which we, vote on annually at annual council in terms of putting councillors into those roles. Is there a sort of other side of the process where council and officers review the available roles and look at, from that perspective, any clear and obvious conflicts of interest that may arise from having councillors put forward into those positions?
Yes. So if there is a potential conflict which a member of staff or myself identify, then that conversation would be had with the councillor. And if the councillor thinks that there might be an impact, if they're, an exec member, and then they're also potentially going to be appointed to an outside body, then they can have that conversation, because I think it's really important that councillors are aware of when they may or may not be able to potentially get involved with something at council level because they sit on an outside body. So I think it's really important. I think also this new document and training is very, very important, because then you know what you're getting yourself into if you do accept a role on an outside body, whether or not it's appointed by the council or in a private capacity.
Just thank you. I've got a couple of further requests. Paul.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just probably a slightly technical question with the document. On page 23, it talks about the 3 types of organisation that are typical, and then it goes on in 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, then on the next page to talk about those. The bullet point says charitable trusts, whereas the actual section talks about charities. And my understanding is charitable trusts are a specific, charities is a broader term than charitable trusts, which is just one type of charity. Is it that this guidance is supposed to apply to all types of charity, not just trusts? Is that?
Yeah, so it differentiates that, but it does include if you're a trustee of a charity, and goes into whether or not you have a fiduciary duty under charity law, sort of thing. So yeah, it's the broader umbrella approach. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Manta, Ian.
Following on the discussion, I think it would be helpful if we can find the information as to what the role we're being asked to appoint to is. Is it a trustee, or is it just a committee member, or is it an observer? So if we could, wherever we can get that information, it would be helpful if we could add it to the appointment process to the annual council.
Yeah, I mean, I know we obviously circulate information about to existing post holders of external bodies as to how it's going and whether we think it's, but is something that's included on that to meet Ian's question?
Yes, it should be included, but if there's any sort of confusion, then that's something that we can have that conversation with before that meeting where we do the appointment process. But the different positions should be set out quite clearly, and if they're not, then we can have that conversation. Yeah, okay. Thank you. I mean, that's something that we can take away with committee services. Thanks.
Thank you. Any Nicholas?
Just an observation. I wanted to endorse what Isabel has just been explaining. I'm very encouraged in my role that people are so supportive, because certainly, and Isabel will know this as well as I do, if not better, that the number of occasions we've had to try to unpick activities being undertaken by members where there is not clarity over what they are or are not doing, and this, I think, adds a great deal of clarity to what external roles should be. So I would certainly commend it, from my point of view.
Thank you. Any further questions? Can't see any further requests. So the recommendation is that And the committee recommend the full council approve and adopt the updated guidance for councillors. I'm happy to propose from the chair. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Hoskins. Thank you. And open to debate from colleagues. No, I think so. If then, Joseph, we can move to the vote.
Thank you, Chair. That's carried unanimously.
Thank you. That takes us to item 8, which is adoption of the monitoring officer protocol. And again, Isabel to present the report. Isabel.
Thank you, Chair. So I am pleased to present this report, which seeks the committee's recommendation to full council for the adoption of the monitoring officer protocol into the council's constitution, and to note the recently published guidance document titled the Golden Triangle: Governance, Roles and Responsibilities. So the committee will know that in recent years, we've seen a growing emphasis across the local government sector on integrity, transparency and ethical conduct. And the protocol before you today formalises how this role operates in practice within our organisation. It sets out both the expectations and the safeguards to ensure the role can be carried out effectively and independently. So it provides a clear framework, and as you'll see, it essentially is a governance safeguard. So it codifies how we maintain legality, fairness and accountability, along with proportionality in our actions as a council. So it ensures members, officers and the public understand the role of the MO. It aligns with national standards. And finally, by embedding the principles of the Golden Triangle within our constitution, we're able to provide clearer governance guardrails. So you will see, subject to the committee's endorsement this evening, the report recommends that the committee notes the Golden Triangle guidance and then recommends to full council that the MO protocol be formally adopted into the constitution. So again, Chair, I commend the report to the committee and I would welcome any questions.
Thank you. And open for questions. First of all, Ian, Councillor Mantle.
Small point, but I found that the report was confused on gender. It was a mixture of no gender and female gender, and so could somebody please look through it and make it consistently gender-free?
Thank you. Yeah, that's a good point. For next, Councillor Munster, Ralph.
I do have just a few questions about this. I think it's really welcome that we are formalising this, and it certainly will provide more information and clarity both to members and to officers when dealing with the monitoring officer and what their responsibility is within the authority. Just in terms of, and again, it is welcome that we've got the summary of the functions and the legislative provision of which they speak. In terms of terms of which are used within the document, would I just be able to question with respect to reportable incidents, because we've of course got the policy and the procedure for that, but it's not necessarily clear what is counted as a reportable incident. So would you be able to give a little bit of clarity as to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So reportable incident, it would be in relation to something which is reported to the monitoring officer. So it could be whistleblowing, it could be something to do with safeguarding, those types of incidents, to ensure that people know exactly who they can go to when they have certain issues that they need to discuss either formally or indeed informally.
Ralph, did you want to come back? Do you have a further question?
Yeah, would you mind?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to bring up both your next questions. Yeah,
great stuff, thank you. I think if we could just have a little bit of additional clarity within the protocol itself as to sort of the reportable incident, just to make it explicitly clear to everyone what the type of instance of which we are referencing. Then in terms of conflict, so looking at page 39, section 5, so in paragraph 5b, request neighbouring authority to make them a monitoring officer available to the council to investigate the matter and report to the chief executive and other statutory authorities, officers and/or the council as appropriate. Would you just be able to just sort of provide a little bit of clarity as to what you deem as appropriate to mean?
Absolutely. So if, for example, there was a complaint that needed to be assessed, and it was in relation to a politically charged matter, the CHP says that in certain circumstances we will refer out certain matters. So if it were in relation to the leader, then a view may be taken as to whether or not we need to refer the matter out. And that's to ensure that there is a level of independence. And also, I mean, myself, there might be a matter that I would think would be inappropriate for me to deal with. So if it was something which is quite high profile, or it's high profile and it deals with the leader, it may be better to have someone completely independent from the process. So we do have arrangements with other authorities in the area that have the same code of conduct as us, where we are able to offer one's services to assist with assessments and investigations. And I think that helps in those types of scenarios, which are within the CHP as well.
Thank you for that, and that's very, very helpful. I would just say, as I have done before, if we could sort of potentially include examples, because whilst within this protocol, examples are going to help with the understanding, it's not going to limit the operative way in which this is going to be used. And then just sort of lastly, so jumping back to page 38 and working arrangements. So no one will doubt that the monitoring officer will remain front and centre of all decision making. Just wondering why we've used front and centre as opposed to sort of be a crucial component of the decision making of the council, because of course there are multiple arms of decision making at the authority, of which we all play a role as a team to make decisions. It's a very to the small point. I do apologise.
No, it's fine. So MO is appointed under the 89 Act. They have to make sure that every decision that is made lawfully, and we're not acting outside of our power, so ultra vires. And one of the things that we have to do is we have to see all of the decisions that are made and make sure, give it the green light, give it the thumbs up. That's not something that other officers are able to do within their roles. So it is front and centre, because we need our colleagues to understand that there has to be an oversight from a governance perspective of each decision that is made, because all we have to do is look at what's going wrong with other authorities across the country to see how quickly a lack of oversight on governance arrangements can cause everything to unravel. So that's why it really is front and centre of decision making.
Thank you. And got Paul.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Just a couple of questions on page 40, the section that relates to parish councils. And for transparency, I'm on Knebworth Parish Council as a councillor, but this question does not specifically relate to Knebworth. It's a general question. So the first one is, I think, just to make sure everybody understands, it says the protocol doesn't apply to parish councils, but then later on it does refer back to say the MO is responsible for receiving, investigating complaints about parish councillors, the individuals, not the council. That's my understanding of the situation. That's the first point. The second point was then just about it talks about engaging with the clerk under the processes that it outlines there. What's the situation if any kind of complaint or conduct issue relates to the clerk themselves? Because I didn't think the clerks come under your jurisdiction, but I could be wrong. I just wonder what happens in those kind of circumstances.
Yes, thank you. So that would be an employee matter. So they're not governed by the code of conduct because they're not elected members, parish or otherwise. So with the clerk, that's not something that we would ever get involved in. So that's a second part of your question. The first part of your question in relation to the protocol. So this protocol, as it was formulated, which we didn't make it ourselves, we've adopted it. It is in respect of the council only and not in respect of parish council. So for example, where it says stuff like a decision which is made has to go through the MO, that would be in relation to North Hertfordshire District Council. It wouldn't be in relation to a parish council. They don't have to go through us. But it is correct when it then goes on to say that we are responsible for complaints made against parish councillors. So that is one of our roles as a authority, district authority. And part of our complaints handling procedure is that we will investigate, assess any complaints made against a parish councillor. And what we do is we do try and ask that the matter is resolved at local level first, if that is appropriate and at all possible. Otherwise, we will go through the normal assessment criteria, which is within our CHP.
Just thank you. Just a quick question as well from me. We've got a recommendation that council approve and adopt the monitoring officer protocol into the constitution. Are we able to do that at the meeting, or would there be any other changes to the constitution required, even if it's only minor tweaks to say here's an appendix for the monitoring officer protocol? Is that something additional that we need over and above that when we come to the meeting, and are we able to do that at a council meeting where we aren't otherwise considering the constitution?
Yes, so thank you, Chair. If the committee tonight sees fit that a recommendation is made to full council, then full council have it in their gift to endorse the adoption of the MO protocol, and it will be something that we would slip into the constitution. I would suggest that the best place for this would be around section 17 in relation to code of conduct, staff and governance arrangements. If it was something which was a small tweak, which I don't think that this is, then there are delegations available for officers to tweak the constitution, but that's more for formatting and very small minor changes. But something like this, adopting a protocol, I think that would sit with full council, and it's within their gift to say if they are happy with that, and that is on the basis that the committee recommend that full council adopt it.
And then my other question was, there's obviously been a few sort of suggested comments and potential changes. Just could you perhaps sort of clarify what's the best way of dealing with it? We can delegate to you and maybe the sort of committee chair or something, just to take that forward if colleagues here are happy with that. If you think there's some further examples or additions needed from councillor comments this evening.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I think this is really helpful. I really, really appreciate the comments from members, because I need this kind of feedback to ensure that anything that we adopt is the best it can be, and it's something which members can work with, and also colleagues, in officers can work with as well. So it's really, really helpful to know what members need to understand and take effect to these protocols. So what we can do is we can amend them, make those amendments. I agree with all of them. I think it really, really makes sense to take them on board, and I thank members of the committee for those suggestions. And then it'll be a case of when it gets to full council, updating the report to say that these were some suggestions and these are, reflected within the documents.
I'm very happy to propose this, Chair. But in terms of sort of our recommendation, our decision making, with respect to, I think probably what's recommendation 2.2, do we need to then sort of amend that to read something like, recommend the full council approve and adopt the monitoring officer protocol in the constitution, subject to consultation with the chair of standards and maybe group leaders?
I mean, I would say subject to the comments and suggestions put forward by the committee rather than having to go through another consultation. Thank you.
Yeah. So if we can tweak that recommendation appropriately, we've got those two recommendations in front of us with that second one as amended. I think, Ralph, you're happy to propose that. Could I have a seconder for that? Yeah, Councillor Hoskins, it's indicated.
A roll tonight.
Thank you. I mean, open to debate. And Nicholas.
I mentioned to Isabel earlier on, I don't know whether you need to formally me to mention, there are a couple of points on pages 41 and 42, but they're probably typos more than anything else. One relates to complaints being investigated, but of course they would be assessed before any investigation takes place. And the other matter relates to reference to independent member, should we say independent person. I mean, these are very minor points, but they're consistent with just to mention them formally. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that, Nick. 'Cause that's really, thank you, that Nick. 'Cause that's really important. We can take both those points on board. Thank you. We're open to debate. I can't see any other requests. So if we can then move to the vote.
Thank you, Chair. That's carried unanimously.
Cheers. Thank you very much indeed. Thanks, colleagues. That brings us to the end of the meeting. It's 20:05. Thanks, Isabel and committee services colleagues. And we'll close the meeting and enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you very much.